Moonshine Sonata. This once-in-a-lifetime event is 2.5 years in the making. At the beginning of the pandemic, Dale and Michelle Isom commissioned a piece of music that would be dedicated to the people and to the history of Wilkes County. Tonight's performance is the Moonshine Sonata, and it's their gift to the home they and their family love. And before each piece, Jens is going to be walking us through as we take this musical journey together through the physical and emotional ups and downs of moonshining, its consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, right now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jens Kruger.
Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, everybody. What a joy, what a pleasure, what an amazing evening for us, you know, that been waiting for this moment for so long. And before I say anything about the piece, I want to, you know, just tell you that it's important that, you know, always has been that people come and say, I have an idea, I want to support an artist, and maybe he can write something for this and this cause, you know, or something. And Dale and Michelle Isom, we talked for a long time, you know, they said, at one point, I want to give you a commission, you know, for Wilkes County or something. So at one point, they came and said, you know, in the beginning of the pandemic, hey, why don't we give you some work? And I thought it was a perfect moment, and I discovered my home. Never knew I had one like that. And I started composing for this commission. And I want to, first, before we start this evening, I want to thank Dale and Michelle Isom to give me this opportunity. I want to invite him here on stage and thank him for trusting in my abilities. And I want to just, you know, symbolically give him the world premiere poster of Wilkesboro for the Moonshine Sonata. And thank you. Thank you. Well, first of all, I know this is maybe a little long-winded, a speech like this. I don't want to keep it too long, and I don't want to, you know, bore you with some things. But it's common, you know, that at a premiere, it's only one premiere for a piece of music, and it's going to stick around, hopefully, for a longer period of time. And so it's just sort of a tradition that I say something about the piece and why, and, you know, a little bit of some of the history. First of all, Moonshine Sonata, of course, a little tongue-in-cheek, with the Moonlight Sonata with Beethoven, as you all well know. And Beethoven didn't name the Moonlight Sonata. It was a music critic, much later, you know, heard the piece for the first time, that sonata, and described it as the moonlight reflecting on Lake Lucerne, which, of course, you know, speaks to me because that's where I lived before we moved to America. And then Moonshine Sonata, of course, you know, if anybody would write a piece like that about moonshine and writing a classical piece, who else would it be here in Wilkes County than me? You know, I call myself proudly an Alpine Billy. The same people, just somewhere else. It's the same mentality, and it's a lot. We have a lot in common. And why would I choose a subject like the moonshine per se? And we get into that just a second. Just on a technical term, a sonata is traditionally a two or three part piece of music that develops in different styles and ways. And it's been around a long time, since the Baroque times up until today. But this is not, you know, and the sonata is actually a solo piece for an individual instrument or maybe a very small ensemble. But as soon as you know, take the same kind of setting and the same development and, you know, exposition, you know, parts, and you blow it up to a bigger orchestra, you call it a symphony. And of course, what we're doing here tonight is neither or that, you know, is none of that. It's actually a suite. It's a suite of tunes, and so the name is already misleading. And that here's. And I pondered on that for a while. I thought I really like this title, and I don't want to, you know, move away from it. So I stuck with the title, but I said, well, I have the right to do whatever I want. This is America. So I'm in Wilkes County, and especially on the subject of moonshine. Well, there's been a lot of music written, with moonshine in mind, especially, in the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s. A lot of, artists, indulged on this subject in a funny way or in a cheeky way, And I thought, well, when I've met the people here that talked about moonshine, it was like, you don't really make fun of it, or you really don't. It was a serious subject. It's something it touched the entire society of Wilkes County, and all over the South, of course, in the mountains, and where people didn't have much money, and hard times would come along during the 30s in particular, and people tried to survive, and and here comes the typical American thing that we see from Europe. You're governed, but you still do what you want, and so this is a very, and so in Wilkes County, of course, I met a lot of people that, they're proud to be American, but they're proud to be themselves. So there's a sort of a line, so moonshining, of course, is prohibited. It's in the churches. Looks like, I'm not trying to promote consumption of alcohol, right? This is not the point. The point I was interested in is the history, because people would always come and tell me the history of their family related, to moonshining and NASCAR and the whole development of that. I come from a country where farmers are still allowed to make their own liquor according to how many cows they own, because you can't run a farm without alcohol. Because you got to disinfect animals, you got to do all kinds of things, and without alcohol, you just can't run a farm. So in the old days, you didn't buy chemicals, you made yourself alcohol, and then you use it for all kinds of things. And so I'm very much familiar, with the process, because as children, we would, with joy, watch the pigs after they would get fed, the beer. The rest of it, and they would completely lose it. And they would in the afternoon at 1 o'clock, make the biggest racket in town, in the little village we were living. And at 6 o'clock, when it's usually very loud from the hog pens, everything was snoring. So, so I started off, writing this piece by making notes, of what I think is really important. I wanted to make serious, little chapters about it. The first part is secrets. It's in secret, so you don't brag with it, you don't show it off. You just sort of part of it. And I wanted to sort of get to this murkiness, where people decide to get off a straight path and go on their own path, maybe with friends or people they know, and they sort of, get together and they sort of talk and get to it. So I call the first part secrets. At one point, there's this idea, okay, we have talked enough, let's do it. And that's what I called run with it. We run with it, we go and go for it, and close our eyes and just do as good as we can. And then we find people who drive it around, and we weld stills, and we make beer, in the woods, and we hope nobody catches us. And at home we don't say anything. We're at some meetings, or we do some kind of things nobody knows about. I don't know. It's all these secrets, it's all these things. And then run with it, like I said, then it's gonna be done. Then I have a piece that's called Moon Seekers. It's this romantic idea, that we actually gonna achieve something, with what we do, and we're gonna find a peaceful family life with it. Then I have a piece called Spirit of the Woods. Of course, there's double meaning, the spirit and the spirits. Spirit of the Woods, because the first thing that comes to mind coming from Europe and catches our eye and our imagination is the vast forests of the Appalachian Mountains and this region. Compared to Europe, we really have, maybe the Carpathian Mountains, where there's lots of huge forests, but here, I don't know, it's just overwhelming. You can go up to the Blue Ridge Parkway and you look down and you don't see houses anymore. You just see, you can guess that there's maybe people living, but you don't see civilization in a broad sense. And so in these woods, people can hide, people can do all kinds of things. So the spirit of the woods, going out into the woods is a good feeling. It's a good thing, you feel like you're really earth, close to earth and where you once belonged. And then after that, a piece called A Better World. And that's what the people, I talk to, especially all the folks who really been involved in the moonshining, they tell us, how they were hoping that with the money, the little money or that they made, they could provide for their families and, and get along and just hoping that somehow God will forgive them and the state, and that they don't get caught and that they don't have to spend time in jail away from their family. And they're just hoping that everything will be fine, so I call that part A Better World. Then, of course, I have a next section that is called The Sermon, because there's a preacher always, somebody who preaches into the consciousness of people, who tells what's right and what's wrong, or tries to help to get people along. And I wanted to have that consciousness. It's not only by preacher, it's inside yourself, right? The conflict you have by knowing what's right and what's wrong, and you're constantly torn back and forth. And so that sermon should reflect, it has a little feeling of Bach, because Bach is our church music. So I wanted to make it a little bit, in this kind of sort of vein. Our copyist, Luke, who took all my notes and put them in a book, he called it Bluegrass Tarantella, which I thought was very funny. But it's the sermon. And then I wanted to have also musically expressed the alcohol as a effect on the consciousness. And I imagined a man, it's called Lost Amongst the Trees. And it's a man that sort of maybe tasted a little bit too much of his own product. And he is barefoot in his leather boots, stumbling around some creek somewhere far away in some woods, looking into the crowns of the trees and doesn't know where he is anymore. And that's what I wanted to reflect on, a little piece of music that sounds kind of irritating. It starts off rather harmless, but it gets a little weird. So, and then in the end we have a piece that I call Dreams and Fire. And it's the dream and the fire you play with. And also, revenue officers would go around with dynamite and hound dogs. And the hound dogs would smell the still. They would go with dynamite and blow up the still. And dangerous business. And, sometimes at night, I'm laying in bed, I go boom. And Uwe, I said to Uwe, I'm going to say Uwe next day, they blew up another one. No, I'm kidding you. So, no, that's the piece. I think for the premiere, I'm going to say the titles, usually you can clap whenever you like. It's not that serious business, really. It's just music, so it's been having a good time. So you just clap if you feel like it. And between the pieces, I'm just going to say the title so you know where we are. Is that okay? Yeah. I want to thank you. I want to thank the Compass Quartet for learning it, being with us. Gene Hetmaker, Ben Weber, Francois Henkens, Eleanor Barch, of course Joel Landsberg, Jody Call, and my brother Uwe. I want to thank you so much. I hope you're going to enjoy 45 minutes of Moonshine Sonata for Wilkes County.